Fog number 121 is Kevin Campion. Kevin was born in the town of Serena and is one of 3 Fogs to have attended Serena State High and one of 4 to play his junior football with the Serena Crocodiles. A 2-time premiership winning player, Kevin played 4 Origin games for Queensland and played 4 tests for Ireland at the 2000 World Cup. Kevin was the first Warriors player to play State of Origin football and is one of 5 players to have played in grand finals with 3 different clubs. In all, Kevin played 241 NRL games, making his debut for the Gold Coast Seagulls in 1993 and playing his final game for the North Queensland Cowboys in 2004. Well, Kevin Campion, thanks very much for your time. What does it mean to you to be a Fog?
It sort of came later in my career, but, a lot of sacrifice to get to that point. A lot of games, I guess. And just great recognition, I think. But there's not many of us. So I'm very proud, that's for sure, yeah. It's something that I dreamt of as a young fella in Serena, and, I was just lucky enough to achieve it.
Remarkably, so many Fogs have had rural, country, regional upbringings. Yep. You were brought up in the town of Serena. Tell us what it was like growing up in Serena.
Yeah, well, Serena was a great town to grow up. It's one of those towns you could leave your car in the middle of a town, windows down, and have no problem it getting stolen or anything like that. So, I've got some great memories. But it was all about sport, obviously. Either we played soccer early on, and then we transitioned to rugby league. Always playing squash. My uncle built the squash courts in Serena, so that was something that we did weekly. Just a great town, great memories. Spent a lot of time down the creeks. Spent a lot of time fishing. Mum and Dad had a little beach house down at Armstrong's Beach, so we were always prawning and crabbing and fishing, and pretty blessed. Yeah.
So, tell us your football journey, playing in Serena as a young kid. What was your first team, and how did you move through those age groups?
Yeah, well, I started playing soccer, so Mum wouldn't let us play footy until we got a bit older. So basically, when we started playing soccer under 7s, 8s and 9s, all my mates would play soccer, and then they would go over across the road in, Mackay Junior Rugby League and play rugby league. So it got to a point where I just, begged Mum to let me play. So I started playing under 10s, and it was a great journey. Some terrific players come out of that region, and I played with some great talent, growing up. Representing Mackay, we used to go, drive out to Mount Isa. We'd drive to Cairns, drive to Townsville, drive to Innisfail. We'd go to Proserpine. Yeah,
and how long are those drives? For those that, you say it quite, not so much flippantly, but it's just one of those things. We drive to Mount Isa.
Mount Isa's a 16-hour trip, so you'd leave early in the morning. 2:00 in the morning, we'd be back in the back. Mum would have the station wagon. We'd have the mattresses in the back. We'd be sleeping there, and she'd just be driving through. So, some great times, I'd say. And even when we got to a senior level, we used to bus it out. We'd never fly out to Mount Isa, so we'd jump on the bus at 2 a.m. We'd get to Mount Isa at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon and play a game, and then get straight on the bus and come back. So, had some great memories on those bus trips.
So from the Serena Bulldogs to the Serena Crocodiles, when did it start getting serious for you?
Probably, well, I had a year off in the first year under 17s, because we were just 15s, then you went to 17s. So I just turned 16. Well, I just turned 15, so I was under 16s. So I just had a year off and then got back into it in the under 17s, and started to sort of really get right into the footy. We had players that I looked up to from Serena, Rowdy Shearer and Marty Bella. They had left Serena and gone on to play in the big league. So yeah, it was stepping stones. But 17s, then we went 19s, then we went first grade. So and in the competition in Mackay, you'd make the Mackay Foley Shield side. So Foley Shield was a great competition back then that everyone wanted to win, and we were lucky enough to win it in '91, my first year in first grade, A grade in Serena. Yeah, so yeah, we went on to win that Foley Shield, and then a few scouts sort of got me to go down to Sydney. I had a trial down there, and then I ended up going to the Gold Coast Seagulls. Yeah.
Not as a really young man. You're in your 20s when you ended up making your NRL debut for the Gold Coast Seagulls. So how did you end up at the Gold Coast? And had you thought that opportunity had passed you by?
No. I was always, I was leaving Serena no matter what. I jumped in the car. Well, I went down to Sydney for a trial, and I made the under 21s squad for the '92 season. There was a good mate of mine in Mackay, Butchie McCall. He gave Grant Bell a call, and Belly had just been appointed as the under 21s coach at Seagulls, and he asked me to stop in on my way to Sydney. So I stopped in for 4 weeks, trained the house down, and made the under 21 squad. So that's where it all started.
And went on to play 44 games at the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast has always had a bit of a checkered, turbulent history. What was it like those 3 years you were there?
Oh, the best time of my life, And all of my great mates are from that under 21 side. We had Jamie Goddard, Sats, Scotty Sattler, two characters of the game. But all of my great mates are from that particular squad that we had, that under 21 squad in '92.
And then a year at the Dragons, where you played 20 matches, almost all the games in the year, and managed to play in a grand final as well.
Yeah, I was lucky. I got the opportunity to go. I'd signed Super League, and it was in Adelaide at the time. So this was a '96 pre-season, and they lost the court case, so we all went back to different clubs. So I went back to the Gold Coast Chargers, thinking, what am I doing? And then Adrian Brunker, who's a great mate of mine, was great friends with David Wade, and Wadey gave me a call and got me down there, which was great. It was just a turning point in my career. I needed a change from the Gold Coast, and I'm really happy that I left.
Why was it a turning point?
Well, I could have stayed on the coast and just been, and just gone through the motions again. And we didn't have that much success there. But had some great mates who were still there playing. Jamie Goddard's one of my best mates, and he wanted me to come back and play for the Chargers. But yeah, it was just something inside me. I just needed a change. Spent 4 years on the Gold Coast and probably won, probably a handful of games. So it was, and just to go to a club like St George and be coached by David Wade, really, and he was very structured. So, and it suited my game. You knew where you had to be on the field. It was like left and right. So he was, gave you a simple job, and if you did that well, you're in the side.
You mentioned the Super League War, of course, '97. You ended up back in Adelaide. What was it like as a player amongst that turbulence in the game?
Yeah.
Or were you sheltered from that?
Yeah,
to a certain extent?
We were only because there was players of different caliber who were on a lot of money. So, and they were scrutinised the whole time. Both sides of the fence as well. It wasn't just the Super League boys, but Adelaide was. I loved Adelaide, but again, it's what didn't suit my rugby league, and fortunately enough, I made the Super League Queensland side. So met Wayne, and he
Is that how you got to the Broncos?
He orchestrated a little plan to get me to the Bronx. Yeah,
Timely, because you ended up winning 2 premierships
Yeah.
in Brisbane. What was that period of your career like?
Oh, just to play in one grand final at St George, I never thought I'd be in that position again to play in a grand final. And you go, a great mate of mine, Ivan Cleary, played 12 years, and the last year of his career, he's played in a grand final. So, yeah, just to come to a club like the Broncos and to be coached and to play with some of the players that I played with, I could never, being a kid in Serena, everyone wanted to play for the Broncos. Whether regional towns, everyone wanted to come down and play for the Broncos, and there's only there's not too many that got that opportunity. So I'm very lucky. It was, and then to play with some of the players that I've played, and I'll only name the forwards because Andrew G, Peter Ryan, Johnny Plath. I'm good mates with Mickey Hancock. We were roomies in my last year there. Darren Smith, and then you get to play with Alfie and Kevy and the Pearl and
Darren Lockyer.
Darren Lockyer, Wendell.
It's a fair side.
It's a pretty good side.
Yeah. So then the Warriors come calling you, go to New Zealand. A boy from Sarina heading across to New Zealand.
Yeah, and another, I can tell this story because Wayne, I represented Ireland at the 2000 World Cup, and while I was over there, it was like the worst weather in 400 years. So, and my young fella Austin, who's he's 27 now, but he was only a kid back then, baby. He spent a lot of time in hospital in the 2000 season because he had croup. So, I just rang my wife and said, look, I don't think this is for us. Austin's going to struggle over here. So, and I rang Wayne just for some advice again, and yeah, he sort of orchestrated what I had to do was ring up the Brow and Darryl Vandervoort and tell him that I wasn't coming, but I'd just been over.
This was to Castleford?
No, to Warrington.
Oh, to Warrington.
So I'd signed with Warrington,
right?
And Alfie and Gigi were there, and we had a good night on the soup with Elf, Gigi, and Darryl. And about 3 days later, I had to ring him to tell him I wasn't coming. So yeah, but the opportunity was there to go to the Warriors and build that side.
Well, it was a good move because you once again played in a grand final, one of only 5 players to play in grand finals with 3 different clubs.
Yep.
But it also led to your selection in Origin, even though you'd played for Queensland in the Super League Tri-Series. Explain what it was like at the stage of your career, basically, to get that call to say that you were going to become a Queensland State of Origin player.
No matter at what age, it's not. It couldn't be any different. Whether I was 18 or 31 when I debuted. I think it might have been 30 or 29, 30. I was turning 30. Yeah, it was just unbelievable. Yeah, it's just a lot of hard work to get there, and to represent Queensland. It's just a dream come true for me.
Where were you when you found out?
Well, I was at the club, and Ando, the coach, pulled me into his office and told me the news, and I'd been named at 13. Probably a lot of people wouldn't know this, but I ran on at hooker. Mm-hmm. Probably the worst hooker that Queensland ever.
I was going to say, where would you rank yourself on a list of hookers behind Cameron Smith?
Well, I couldn't pass left to right. So
the reason I asked the question where you were was you had to travel from Auckland to link with the team. What was that trip? It must have seemed like an eternity to get from Auckland, having found out you just would have wanted to get there, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And we all met at the Gold Coast airport so that's where we all jumped on the bus, and we went up to a retreat in the back of the hinterlands on the Gold Coast called Queenslander, I think it was, and we spent a week there. Yeah, so it was different to what I had been told an Origin experience was going to be like. But they, the Queensland side had been beaten pretty convincingly in 2000. So that 2001, we sort of knuckled down, and we weren't, we basically weren't allowed to drink or go out, and so it wasn't the party that it was all cracked up to be.
So you're playing for Queensland for the first time, obviously a dream come true.
Yep.
You're wearing number 13, but you're told you're going to be playing hooker.
Yep.
Did that add to the anxiety or the nervousness of running
we
out?
had one of the best hookers. Johnny Doyle was a great hooker, playing good footy for the Cowboys. So I don't know why Wayne, in his, he put me at hooker. But anyway, I think it was more that I was being, experienced player, being able to,
To this day, you still can't work it
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Because three of the four games, it wasn't just that first game. No. 3 of your 4 games, you were named at lock, but played hooker.
Even 2002, I got named at lock again and started at hooker. So, anyway, I can't complain.
But you would have played on the wing to play
100%,
for Queensland.
Yeah.
What are your memories of those games?
Oh, just that first game. When I debuted at the Old Lang Park, it was just amazing. Just the atmosphere. You couldn't hear. You just could not hear anything when we ran out. It was just unbelievable. So it was very emotional too. Like it, So I'm 29, turning 30. I thought I may have debuted a bit earlier than that, but it wasn't to be. But it was, it was just amazing. Yeah.
More than you expected it to be, or what? You'd obviously thought about it as a professional rugby league player, how good it would be to represent Queensland. Was the experience more than you expected?
Yeah, like the experience, you do, you can get overwhelmed, I guess. But I was very lucky that I'd, had 3 really good years with the Broncos, and a lot of those players were in that my debut game. So there were a lot of familiar faces, and so that gave me a bit of comfort. Playing hooker wasn't giving me any comfort, but yeah, it was just a great experience, So, yeah.
And to play 4 games and get through that first one at hooker and to be invited back must have been a huge thrill as well. Was there any difference between the first, second, third and, say, 4th games? The fact that, did you feel any more comfortable as time went on?
I never felt comfortable playing hooker, no, it wasn't my position, Similar, you're in the middle of the, in the middle forwards. Defensively, it didn't sort of change anything about my game. But yeah, you had to be fit to play at hooker. Yeah, I don't know how Cameron Smith did it for so long.
I want to ask the question about, we mentioned earlier about regional country straight towns. How does a town like Serena produce so many FOGS? What's in the water in Serena?
Well, I was a water treatment plant.
I know. So I want to know what was in the water.
A lot of chlorine.
But it is remarkable when you look at the number of FOGS who have their start in country areas.
Yeah.
Do you reckon that it's not just a coincidence?
Well, Serena's a solid, obviously country town, but we all grew up playing rugby league, so that there's only a small. I think the population's only 3,000 odd people. So, and
it's a massive strike rate.
Yeah. But the Mackay region in itself, there's been so many great players that have come from that region and gone on to represent Australia or Queensland, or even before pre-Origin. There's so many great players from that region. we were just lucky enough that Dale and Marty were, around the same era, basically. Yeah.
Who had the biggest influence on your career?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Well, I don't think my career would have been the same if I hadn't met Wayne. If I didn't represent Queensland in that Super League side. So probably, I've had some wonderful coaches, but Wayne, he's just a terrific man. So I was very, very, very lucky. So probably the old man sort of installed a lot of great things in me. Work ethic, for one, he was a hard worker. My uncles, my uncle Paul was he was a guy that built the squash court in Serena, very competitive. My goal, if anything, was only to beat him in one game of squash. So, and I achieved that. So, yeah, look, I've had some really good mentors, but Wayne, as a coach and a man, he'd be up there.
What do you reckon the young kid from Serena would think if you told him back then that he'd go on and play nearly 250 NRL games and play at a World Cup, win a couple of premierships and be a FOG?
Yeah, I don't, it's amazing, isn't it? Just the journey from where you start, you've got to have belief in yourself. And I think that's where it all starts. If you don't think you're good enough, you're not good enough. But yeah, I always thought, someday. So I kept on working hard but met, that journey, that rugby league journey, that 12 years that I spent, I've met some of the, some of my best mates. Jamie Goddard's, one of my best mates, and we both arrived at Seagulls on the same day. And we both, go on to play for Queensland, and he was another influence. Like, he was the fittest man that I've, he was just if it wasn't for Jamie, I don't think, he was just miles and miles ahead fitness-wise, and I think that, I was just trying to keep up with him. So if I was half as fit as him, I thought I'd be going okay.
Well, FOG number 121, Kevin Campion, thank you very much for your time and congratulations on a wonderful career.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for watching this episode of the FOGS Queenslander podcast. If there's a FOG you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.